YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. Today we're ranking offensive linemen, separated them into tackles and into interior offensive linemen, of course. So we're going to rank some of the top prospects, have some interesting takes. We've been going through our position rankings for the NFL draft. There's a playlist full of them. We are about through with the offensive positions now. On the defense next, we'll have NFL draft content along the way leading up to the draft, live during day one of the NFL draft. And then on Twitter, that's right here. And then on Twitter, day 2 and 3, and then content throughout and after as well. So join us here, like, subscribe to notifications on, follow us on Twitter. There's links for anything you are looking for pinned in the comment section. My number one tackle is actually Darnell Wright. That might not be the most common take, even though the buzz is starting to heat up with Darnell Wright. I do think he's a first-round lock. I mean, not even everyone's talking about him in the first round, but you should get used to that. Mainly, it's just rare to see a guy, because he's a big dude, 6'5", 333, and he blocks like a big dude. Very, very powerful, and that's what stands out the most. But, I mean, whenever you get these guys, they have the flaw of, they can't move too much, or they struggle against the speed rushers, and I just don't see any of those struggles for Darnell Wright. I mean, you can make a highlight tape out of him blocking, which is not super common with offensive linemen. But because, him pancaking somebody or throwing somebody. But probably what's not getting talked about enough is kind of his movement skills, his footwork, lateral movement, mirroring ability. I've seen multiple guys try to spin around him, and they can't do it. So he's good from getting one side to another side. And it's felt like every game was going the same way, like him not allowing somebody to bull rush him or drive him backwards, and him end up kind of throwing somebody, and then they kind of go, all right, I got a speed rush, I got to pull out some maneuvers, maybe they don't normally do, some spins, and that doesn't really go well either. And then a tape like Will Anderson, against Alabama, really stood out because Will Anderson's an elite prospect. I mean, he's more speedy than strong, so of course he's not going to bull rush Darnell Wright, but he couldn't do anything against him. And he made Will Anderson look like a different player. Like, not only just he had an off game, but he looked like a different player. So for all those reasons, that is why I'm a big fan of Darnell Wright. He's going to be a top 10 player. I always got a top 10 grade, but he is going to be a top 10 player on my board as well. Big fan of his. Some people talk about him playing guard. I'd be disappointed in that because I think he's a hell of a tackle. I think he can play left or right. I would like him at right. But if he plays guard, he's probably going to be a Pro Bowl guard pretty early on. He's probably going to bully some guys on the interior, can bully some guys on the outside. But he's got to get drafted by the right team, though. There's going to be teams that, I expect to draft. I think he'll play well in a gap scheme with a lot of, north blocking, north and south, but straightforward driving, mainly with the run game. He's not outside zone teams probably not going to draft him. If they do, then I'm probably not going to like him as much, but I still will really like him as a pass protector, of course, still. But yeah, he won't fit every scheme, but there's teams picking towards the top that, man, he would really fit. You look at the Raiders, you look at the Patriots, teams like that. I mean, there's more, but those are two that are pretty damn early that need a tackle or an offensive lineman that stand out. But yeah, sometimes he'll kind of go for the big hit, like the pancake, and he'll really like lunge forward, and maybe he'll kind of fall forward because of that. The balance is fine overall, but he'll kind of get himself off balance by doing that. So that's something that really, I think, with just getting experience could help, like just calm him down a little bit. So I don't really see too many negatives because of that. I mean, there's other guys that move a little quicker, a little faster, a little more athletic, but not by much. And this guy's super powerful, weighs 333. So big fan of Darnell Wright, top tackle in the class for me. Also a top 10 grade on my number 2 tackle, and that is Paris Johnson Jr., he's big too, but he's a different style tackle than Darnell Wright. There's teams that I'm gonna like Paris Johnson Jr. better than Darnell Wright, and vice versa. But the elite length obviously stands out, 6'6", and he has the arm length to go with it, which arm length is so important when it comes to offensive tackle, especially these days. I think he's the best outside zone blocker in the class. He's got the most experience out of it, even though it's not all that tackle, but even at tackle, out of the top guys, he's got the most experience in terms of outside zone, pulling, getting outside, being able to have the movement skills to get in space and then be able to block in space, get upfield, things like that. So there are teams maybe looking for a tackle that the Cardinals, if they trade back a little bit, but the Bears looking for that, outside zone type of tackle. the Jets, the Steelers, these types of teams this is their number one guy. It has to be. So I do think he's probably a better run blocker in that scheme. But in terms of pass protection, very solid. I think I like Wright a little bit better. Very solid athlete. Paris Johnson Jr., very quick for his size. You think a guy with this much length, this much size shouldn't be that quick. He's pretty damn quick. Impressive on those cutoffs and getting those awkward angles, sealing guys off. He's pretty damn good in those categories. Hands, this pops up a bunch to me, actually. Hands get pretty damn wide. He's still winning the rep, hitting the block, but hands will be pretty damn wide outside the shoulder pad, sometimes in the bear hug. College football, especially like the big shot teams, they just, for whatever reason, they just rarely get called for holding. So Ohio State, Paris Johnson didn't get called too much holding. It's kind of the same case for a lot of those big time teams and Big Ten teams. But in the NFL, they're actually cutting back a little bit. Their offensive linemen are getting away with a little bit more these days, but they will call some of these that were not called in college. So that is, and he's limited at tackle, but that kind of just means he has upside at tackle. So there's really one negative, but is one that popped up quite a bit, which driving me a little nuts. How because he's going in to block someone, he just instantly grabs him on the outside. I want to see more inside. Get inside those shoulder pads. If you're gonna grab, get in there. Not holding on the outside. So that's something that popped up a little too much. But other than that, there really isn't too many negatives. He's the best at his position / scheme, like we talked about. So that makes him somewhat of a top tier offensive prospect in this draft here. So he's number 2 for me. Number 3 is Broderick Jones, who's a very interesting prospect. And knew about Broderick Jones throughout the year, but when you're watching Georgia every week, you don't really focus on the offensive line too much. You kind of notice these things when we get to the tape, and it's just some things I didn't really expect. But the athleticism power combo is impressive because he's a built dude. He's strong. He's powerful. Has some good jabs. But I think the athleticism, like the quickness, stands out a little bit more maybe than the power. People probably would debate that, but I like that there's a combination there. He's very, very, very quick feet. We talked about that. Great out in space. Georgia wouldn't really run the ball out in space and have their offensive linemen shift out there a whole lot, but they did run a lot of screens, get the running back the ball in the passing game on the outside, and that's where he had his opportunity to get out in space, and he was pretty damn impressive when doing that. Really impressive, actually. Upside with more reps. He actually has the least amount of games started from tackles in this class. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty damn crazy. And upside in the zone scheme. That's why all this makes him an interesting prospect, and the negatives, because Georgia, mainly gap blocking and running and inside zone. Not a lot of, mainly gap actually. But I would love to see him an outside zone, getting him outside, getting him moving, in space to that next level. That's where he really stands out. And overall, I didn't really love his tape. And there's some good things we talked about. You could see the athleticism, you could see the power, but how does he put it all together? The tape really wasn't that great, which I was surprised about. He's a risky pick because of that, and you might have to alter his scheme a little bit. But a lot of the time, putting his head down, lunging forward sometimes, but a lot of times he's going at guys with his head down, and they make a move, and next there's no one in front of him anymore. They're by him, and he's starting to lose his balance a little bit, and he doesn't really know it. So I'm just confused on why his head's down so much and what he's trying to do. Part of his body acts like he's going for a lunge, and part of his body's like they're staying put and ready to block. It's very strange. Yeah, and sometimes we'll even try to block guys with his body. He'll just throw his body, and I just rarely see that from quality offensive linemen. So there are some negatives there, but yeah, a lot of those negatives kind of popped up when he's just supposed to drive forward. A lot of that gap / man blocking, north and south blocking, and a lot of that it popped up, and it worked for Georgia. They were really good, and overall he kept his quarterback pretty clean, especially compared to the rest of the offensive line, which overall was good. So overall he did a pretty good job. So he could kind of stay in that scheme and keep working towards that because he has the power to usually want the powerful guys to do that. Or I thought his best moments were out in space and where he has time to, where he has time to move and kind of plan his next step. I thought that was where he was better. So, and he did not have many outside zone attempts, like less than 50, I want to say. So it's a little risky. It's an interesting prospect. It's risky. He's a risky pick because of that, but he needs more reps, plain and simple. No matter the scheme, he needs more reps. So with more time learning, and he's already pretty good for the least amount of snaps, at the tackle position in this class, like that's pretty damn good. And I again, less than 50 snaps in the outside, running outside zone, but I see a lot of upside there. So this guy's either going to be freaky good down the line, probably an outside zone scheme, which is a scheme change, a little bold of me to say. I don't think it's that bold, or he's just going to continue to whiff, put his head down, and then, or maybe a gap team takes him and continues to work at that, So I'm going to put a round 1 grade on him. Honestly, the tape, like today, doesn't, like based on the talent that I saw, actually does not say round 1. I was surprised to see that, but factoring in like the build, the athleticism, the strength, what he could be maybe in the right scheme with more reps, you take a shot on him somewhere, middle of the first round, maybe maximum. Somebody might take him earlier than that. Maybe one of those outside zone teams if Paris Johnson Jr. is out off the board, and they might see his upside, maybe a rebuild type team or a team somewhere in those rebuild stages. He's a very intriguing, as you could tell, based on my words. Not everyone's going to be the same, but it's a very intriguing prospect. And there was a time where I was like, do I put a round 1 grade on this guy? But I could see him like down 3-4 years, starting to figure it out 5 years, and then like an outside, doesn't have to be outside zone, but I can see that where he has more upside there, just really tearing it up. Like I can see the potential. You can feel it. So he can end up being the best tackle in his class, or he can be a bust. It's crazy. And then before we get to the interior guys, other guys I want to talk about, and this is where I'm a little different, not really 4-5, but Anton Harrison from Oklahoma, I got 2 Oklahoma guys here, so I do like the Oklahoma guys, but they're a little tough to project because that new scheme this past year, a lot of RPO. It's not really your NFL style. I mean, there's more RPO coming in the NFL, but there's really no scheme that's exactly like it in the NFL, so it's going to be a little bit different. Who's going to view him as a fit? Maybe a little bit. Yeah, so it's going to be a scheme change, so it's a little bit of a risk. It's a little bit of risk there, and he is a big boy, but sometimes plays a little smaller, mainly with his hands. I wish his hands don't play like a strong guy, if that makes sense. But the athlete's athleticism size combo is pretty damn impressive, and there is some power in there. Once he gets a hold of somebody, you can see it kind of matches the size. You can see the power. So it's a guy that just has the ideal build, and he ended up being a little. He's a good athlete, even more of an athlete than I thought looking at the combine. So that was great. Good length. I don't know if I want to say elite, like blow your mind length, but you could say elite. It's pretty much there. And he had a good tape. Overall, he did his job. It's a unique scheme, but he did his job. And usually these guys that got a pretty good tape and have this build and then the traits, the athleticism, they usually go first round. So that's the thing with him. It's a little tough to project. And then DeJuan Jones from Ohio State, interesting one as well because it could be a scheme change, but elite length. I mean, freaky length and a freaky run blocker. Like he's really good as a run blocker. And Ohio State mainly ran outside zone. I mean, he's not really he's lacking as an athlete. He's not super quick to get outside when you need him to, but when he can run block, he seals guys off. It's mainly with his length. And he's a smart run blocker, because he seals guys off. He doesn't let them around him, and it kind of opens up the whole the other offense lines to do their part for Met to work as well. But he is tall, so he plays a little tall. You see that quite a bit. It almost comes with size, and he will lose his balance because of that. It kind of makes sense a little bit because he's very big. He's not the best athlete, but then you wonder about the skill. That's the big thing with him because Ohio State was just mainly outside zone. It was like 90% outside zone. So, but usually these big bully run blockers, like big, they can't move too well. Usually they're more like gap/man schemes. But he was good outside zone. But at the same time, you do want him a run heavy team. A lot of those run heavy teams are more gap and inside zone, but. Not necessarily, I'd say, but so he could switch schemes there, but he's going to be a really good run blocker. Is he too tall? Could he lose his balance? He does, and needs to get better as a pass blocker. Wanya Morris is a guy that's just not getting any buzz, but I'm a fan of the upside here. I'd like for a team on day 2. He's not getting any day 2 talk, but on day 2, because I think there's a big drop-off in the tackles. I'd rather take a guy with an upside, but a team that, not trying to win right now. They're kind of rebuilding, need a tackle. I mean, you have a right tackle here, that you can see the upside for multiple reasons. I mean, he has elite length, freaky length, and he's a hell of an athlete. So, I mean, combining those two, and he has enough strength, in my opinion, as well. He's not crazy powerful, but enough. Combining all of that, this guy's got some upside. He's got a pretty good tape this year, bounced around, went from Tennessee to Oklahoma. He was a former 5-star, legit top recruit, so you know what's in there. You know that, there's a reason. People want to work with those traits, so I love the upside there. Footwork is very sloppy. I mean, the base doesn't match the upper body. But there's some good offensive line coaches in the NFL. He's got to go on the right team. He's got to land on the right team to hit that upside. But they gotta refine his technique for sure. So he's a little sloppy, and it kind of causes some balance issues. I'd say more leverage issues. I'd say because of it, but. Man, you could feel the upside there. And Carter Warren, not really getting talked about a whole lot either. I really liked his tape. In terms of his tape, I'd say talent-wise, just based on what you're watching, I'd say it's round 2, But there are some negatives. 24 years old as a rookie. It's a little up there. Coming off an injury this past season, too, as a meniscus. And run blocking can improve. He's more of a pass protector, but it's good for today's NFL. But the run blocking can improve. He's kind of, but the pass protection's so good. He's so physical. He's got that elite size, elite length. So good as a pass blocker. I just really enjoyed his tape too. So it's tough, because he's 24. Maybe rather have one of these upside guys. He's coming off the injury on top of it. Could get better as a run blocker, but he's going to go earlier than people think. I'd probably have him over Morris, but Morris is the complete opposite, where it's he has the traits too, but Morris is way more athletic than Warren, and he has way more upside. Carter Warren, what you're going to get if he's healthy. Does he have a ton of upside? Probably not. But those two guys are just not in this conversation I don't look at a ton of rankings, but I just haven't heard their names a whole lot. So I guess guys that I'm pretty high on. Then Matthew Bergren from Syracuse is an interesting one as well, because he is a very solid run blocker. He's impressive in space, getting upfield, getting to the next level. He's pretty quick. Really stands out as a run blocker, though. At the same time, getting upfield, it's, because he's quick, but the footwork sometimes gets a little weird. It's almost like he's waddling or choppy. And I don't know if it really it does affect him. So I was going to say, I don't know if it didn't really affect him a whole lot, because he played well. He's a well-known tackle. Did affect him some. I think that kind of goes in from the power rushers. The bull rushers really drove him back in the pocket. He didn't give up the sack because he stayed in front of the guy. He can latch on pretty well, but the pocket is collapsed because he's allowed to get driven back, and that might be from the footwork getting maybe off balance a little bit. It doesn't look like he's gonna fall or anything, but because he doesn't have the full power on the ground because the way he moves a little bit, maybe that is why. Makes sense to me. But I do notice that he gets driven back a bit. And people talk because he's so good of a run blocker, because his style, he kind of looks like a guard. I see a lot of people saying that, a lot of upside in a guard. And I can see what they're saying. I can see play style, and he's a really good run blocker. There's things you got to work on as a pass protector. So it makes sense. And he doesn't have elite length. So it makes sense as a guard. But the issue, if he has problems with the power guys off the edge, how is he going to be against the defensive tackles? Again, in the NFL. I mean, he's powerful defensive tackles. If he's at guard, I think they're going to bully him. They're going to drive him straight back. Those pockets are going to be collapsed. So that's where, I can see, you want to put him at guard. I see why. That's the reason where I'm going to keep him at tackle. I don't really want him at guard. But, yeah, so I think other people are maybe a little higher on him. I think it's a little bit too much of a gamble in the second. But you see the talent is there. He did a pretty good job this year. Really good run blocker. So if you're a team that runs the ball a bit and you need a tackle to help you with the run blocking, that might be your guy there. A lot of talk in a second. It might be a little early. Talk about the guards. I do have Peter Skoronski at guard, but he can't play tackle. He's an impressive tackle. But 6'4", 313. I mean, that's good size. He's just lacking that length. and length, taken very seriously in the NFL. And if anybody's new here, I wasn't one of those people that had former Northwestern tackle Rashawn Slater at guard. I had him at tackle, and I was very firm on that. He hit just over, the limit for me, I think for a lot of people in terms of the arm length. And Skoronski is just under that. Doesn't mean he can't play tackle, but I mean, I'm a big fan if you kind of look at the recent past and you see what type of tackles are working and what are not, and a certain length does. And it doesn't mean that he would not work, like he wouldn't be good. He'd be a solid tackle. But I think you have a really good guard here, really good upside guard. But he's an impressive tackle. But I think he could be a Pro Bowl guard pretty early on. Scheme versatile, that's a big thing too, because you can see it. And Northwestern ran definitely a lot more gap than anything, and then probably inside zone and then outside zone. But I've seen enough from him across the board that he can any of those. Like he can run any scheme. He'll be fine, and he's equally as effective as a pass protector, and a run blocker too. So love that. I don't necessarily think he's like way better at one or even better at one. He's just pretty damn good at both. Great balance and bend too. He gets low when he needs to, like with the knee bend. He just, and you see how he uses his hands. They're very powerful. So that's great as well. I think that stands out. The balance and bend probably stands out way over the whole entire of the offensive line class. But yeah, why pass on? Lack of length. I think it shows too. I mean, he didn't really get beat a whole lot, but there was times where he got like blown backwards, and it's. So and the first thought is like, all right, that guy just out physicaled him. He's way stronger. Like, is he weak? And it's not. It's because he couldn't even get his hands on him. He's going legs versus whole body. Because if a pass rusher gets his arms on him, you're driving with your whole body, and he doesn't have his hands on him because he got your hands on you first, and he has the better length. Then, you're trying to stop him. You're trying to anchor him with your lower body. So it did show up a little bit. I know Van Ness got him good at one point. Didn't show up a whole lot, but it showed up enough where it's like, yeah, that's probably why we're talking about him as a guard. I think there's teams that probably would put him at tackle. I think there's more teams. Take 32 NFL teams. There's definitely more that would like him at guard. So the position change is likely. We know him as a tackle, so that's kind of tough. I think he'll be just fine though. And he was penalized a bit, which is tough because teams like Ohio State, Michigan, in the Big Ten, it's just how it is in college football. Unfortunately, they won't get called for the same exact situation. Northwestern might get called a little bit more, so that's a little tough. But Skoronski, yeah, how early do you take a guy you're going to put at guard? That's the question, I suppose, with a guy like this. But the talent is there. I like that he's scheme versatile. I think he'll be position versatile too, and that's great in today's NFL. We're not going to compare the two players in terms of their skill, but take for just one example, the Cowboys drafting Tyler Smith last year, and he was a tackle, but they saw the upside as a guard because he's just a run blocker. He's a bully blocker, very powerful. They're going to attack him. They're going to take him. They're going to put him at guard. The Cowboys, like they always do, unfortunately, have injuries across the whole offensive line. So they got injured at tackle. This guy can play tackle. Go put him out there where it's a little more needed. And he's very good, but you slide him back to guard because he's going to be very good there. So I think that's like a positive here because offensive line injuries happen a lot. So start at guard. If he has to go out tackle, he's going to be fine. He's going to hold up there. He's going to be fine. So he's going to be good. But Pro Bowl potential at the guard position. I just wish he had a little bit more length and be talking about as a elite prospect at the tackle position, perhaps. Number 2, I'm going to go with Cyrus Torrance, who, late first round for me. It's just lacking the athleticism. It's kind of taken over today's NFL. You want the guys at the certain quickness, agility. He's not quite there, so that is tough. But he's really good. He's got a really good tape. Obviously has that size, a powerful blocker. You see him drive defenders upfield, with that north and south blocking, driving. But I think he's pretty scheme versatile. You wish you had more athletic guys if you're going to run outside zone, but they ran some outside zone there. And I think he can fit pretty much anybody, even though, build and having that power, more of the power scheme there, but the man scheme. But and he played very well against top competition, including Jalen Carter. I think he stood out in a game like that. He's very smart, very impressive in terms of his reads and switches. When you see the stunts, the twists, picking up the right man. That usually kind of goes into team blocking and communicating correctly with your offensive line. But he seems to be, some guys just don't know, as good as they are, just don't know what to do. I think he's he stood out to me in that category where he's pretty good at it. But yeah, not the most athletic guy, so that kind of comes with it that he can improve his play in space, and he has a couple past injuries, nothing super major, but yeah, it's tough. Like, do you take, guard? Where do you value guard? 'Cause sometimes you can find, starters in the third, fourth round. I mean, Trey Smith was even later a few years ago, but it's not always. And then it's kind of athletes are kind of taking over today's NFL. So you have a guard that's really good. He's not the best athlete. So there's some teams that I understand probably wouldn't take him in the first round. It's not a guy, first round great, but if you reach for him, if you take him over just this way better, like more important and better rated player, then maybe that's a kind of a situation where I'm not going to love it, but we'll see. Overall, a good player. And then number 3, Steve Avila, kind of similar, like powerful. I think he's more likely to be in a gap scheme because he's kind of just an anchor type guy where he's just going to, you can't budge this guy. Like he'll anchor down, he'll sit there and guys will try to drive him back and there's no shot. So that is really, really impressive when that happens, when it's all the time. Very impressive against Michigan. Battle with Mozzie Smith, who's very good. And then, so you got to work around this guy. But when you're in the interior, there's not a whole lot that could be done there. He's experienced at center, which is interesting too, because he might actually be even better at center, like a legit center. And he actually has some decent reps at right tackle. I just do not see an NFL team putting him at right tackle, but it's a positive. He has reps across the offensive line if you need somebody to fill in because you're out of guys, and is a good football player and he's got experience there. That's great. Really good balance, kind of coming with the anchor style blocker here. So he has some kind of eye-popping things, but he's kind of, I don't want to say a one-trick pony. You definitely don't want to say that because he's versatile, but because he's not going to get out in space. He's not super athletic. It's pretty similar to Torrance, but I think Torrance can do a little bit more scheme versatile. And Avila isn't like the tallest guy in the world, but he'll kind of play upright a little too much. But powerful blocker, probably a gap scheme type team. Take some early second, perhaps. And then the next group of guys, Cody Mauk, I like a lot. It's maybe there's you could say there's some risk because he's going from tackle to guard, and he did struggle as a pass protector at tackle because he played too tall, kind of whiffed on some guys. And he's lacking the length, which showed up. But, when you move into guard, I think he's going to be really good at guard. I think he's going to be a really good guard. He's already a mauler of a run blocker. I love that. Very quick. We see especially the testing drills. You're looking at shuttle, 3 cone. Shuttle's the big one. He really stood out there, and you can see on the field too, really quick. I think he's going to be a really good run blocking guard with pass protection upside. It's going to be easier for him on the inside there. So I think it's going to be a round 2 for me. I know some people are round 2, some people are round 3. That's a round 2 for me. Somebody's going to get a good guard with some upside there. Joe Tippmann, I like a lot as well. He's a center we're combining the interior offensive line. That's what I usually always do. But Joe Tippmann, I think, could play guard or center. He kind of gives some guard vibes. He was Wisconsin center. He's always driving guys downfield. And he's always looking for the next guy at the next level upfield, which I love that. He is tall for an interior offensive lineman, but mainly center. I'd say, but he could lose balance, plays a little tall sometimes. He doesn't really play tall. I guess he just is tall, if that makes sense. But that's why I think he might be better at guard, and he has that next level blocks. He's really good run blocker. He can pass protect as well. I think he's scheme versatile. I think he can play in gap or zone. I'm good with him at center or guard. You wish your centers were a little shorter, I guess. It's kind of weird saying a guy, I wish he was shorter, but that's why I do like his upside at the guard position. John Michael Schmitz of Minnesota, who, if you're just like pure outside zone running the football, that's probably your guy, which I do think Tippmann has some upside in that category, but very solid run blocker, pretty good, in space. He's lacking length. Really nothing eye-popping about him, I'd say, but lacking length and 24 years old this year. Late 2 is probably the earliest I would take him. I'm more, it's tough with the centers. I'm more leaning towards 3 because you can get starting centers in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. He's 24. I guess there's nothing that really says, wow, you got to take this guy early, but he is a very good outside zone center. Then Luke Whippler, Ohio State's center, which I think maybe could play guard, but probably best, staying put at center. He is very athletic, very quick. Lateral movement's great. That's where it's maybe get more used to at guard, perhaps. Very strong hands. But the body, like the power, like in the balance of the body, like the hands are great, but I think could lose leverage because of that. Could get caught off balance because of, I guess it's more like the body strength and the power, maybe the lower body, because guys can move him pretty easily sometimes, and he is undersized, so that probably plays a part in that. So doesn't have the craziest at all. He's kind of lacking length a little bit. Slow on the shorter side. And then a guard, Chandler Zavala, NC State's, is my number 8 interior offensive lineman. Very explosive, like fires off the ball and he jabs at the guy, uses his power. He's pretty quick for a guy that's pretty big and explosive. NC State's really good run blocking. I think it started with a guy like that. And then you look at last year with Ekwonu, but Zavala missed some games then as well. So you have past injuries and limited reps. We didn't get to see a whole lot of him, but you like the upside there with him. Not really a big name guy. He's starting to heat up a little bit, but I do have him at 8. And there's some pretty good guys left off this list. Some other good centers, and then guard John Gaines. I like the upside of John Gaines, guard from UCLA. He's actually my number 9 interior offensive lineman, so we left him off this list. But I'll talk about a lot of offensive linemen in this video here. So that is going to wrap it up. So our Twitter subs been getting these rankings earlier in my guide, and they've been getting a spreadsheet with the rankings and with the round grade next to them as well. You can find that on Twitter if you sign up to be a subscriber on Twitter. And plenty of NFL draft content on the channel. Plenty more to come. We live during day 1 of the NFL draft. Any link you're looking for, Twitter, sponsors, anything like that, pinned in the comments. It's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.